Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Paribrajakacarya Stotra Sattasi Simad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrindi Ki Jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Syama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. Jamuna Devi Ki Jai. Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarane. ISKCON New Dwarka Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 1 Creation Chapter 12 Birth of Emperor Parikshit. Text number 2. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tasya Janma Maha Buddhe Karmani Cha Mahatmanaha Nidhanam Cha Yathavasit Yathaivasit Sa Pretya Gatavan Yatha Tasya Janma Mahabudhe Karmani Cha Mahatmanaha Nidhanang Cha Yatai Vasit Sapretya Gatavan Yata Tasya Janma Mahabudhe Karmani Cha Mahatmanaha Nidhanang Cha Yatai Vasit Sapretya Gatavan Yata Tasya Janma Mahabudhe Karmani Cha Mahatmanaha Nidhanang Cha Yatha Vaisit Nidhanang Cha Yathai Vasit Sapretya Gatavan Yata. Please chant. Ladies. Anyone else? Tasya, his, of Maharaja Parikshit. Janma, birth. Mahabudhe, of great intelligence. Karmani, activities. Cha, also. Mahatmanaha, of the great devotee. Nidhanam, demise. Cha, also. Yatha, as it was. Eva, of course. Asit, happened. Sa, he. Pretya, destination after death. Gatavan, achieved. Yatha, as it were. How was the great Emperor Parikshit, who was a highly intelligent and great devotee, born in that womb? How did his death take place? And what did he achieve after his death? Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The king of Hastinapur, now Delhi, used to be the emperor of the world, at least till the time of the son of Emperor Parikshit. Maharaj Parikshit was saved by the Lord in the womb of his mother, so he could certainly be saved from an untimely death due to the ill will of the son of a Brahmana, because the age of Kali began to act just after the assumption of power by Maharaj Parikshit. The first sign of misgivings was exhibited in the cursing of such a greatly intelligent and devoted king as Maharaja Parikshit. The king is the protector of the helpless citizens, and their welfare, peace, and prosperity depend on him. Unfortunately, by the instigation of the fallen age of Kali, an unfortunate Brahmana son was employed to condemn the innocent Maharaj Parikshit. And so the king had to prepare himself for death within 7 days. Maharaj Parikshit is especially famous as one who is protected by Vishnu. And when he was unduly cursed by a Brahmana's son, he could have invoked the mercy of the Lord to save him, but he did not want to because he was a pure devotee. A pure devotee never asks the Lord for any undue favor. Maharaja Parikshit knew that the curse of the Brahmana's son upon him was unjustified, as everyone else knew. But he did not want to counteract it, because he knew also that the age of Kali had begun, and that the first symptom of the age, namely degradation of the highly talented Brahmana community, had also begun. He did not want to interfere with the current of the time, but he prepared himself to meet death very cheerfully and very properly. Being fortunate, he got at least 7 days to prepare himself to meet death, and so he properly utilized the time in the association of Shukadeva Goswami, the great saint and devotee of the Lord. Trinadapi sunichena Taradiva sahishnuna Amanina madanena Sankirtaniya Sadahari. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam. Kalo Nastyeva, Nastyeva, Nastyeva Gatiranyata. So in the first line, Mahabudhe, of great intelligence, there is a very strong statement in the Srimad Bhagavatam that those who are Sumedasa, saying idea, greatly intelligent. In the Bhagavad Gita, we have the opposite word, Opa Medasa. Brain substance, very little. They do not worship Krishna. They worship other gods. Therefore, Krishna says, Alpa Medasa, less intelligent. Don't shoot the messenger. This is what God says. God says if you worship other so-called gods, you're less intelligent. But this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Sumedasa, very intelligent, or here, Mahabudhe, of great intelligence. So who is that? How does Srimad Bhagavatam define someone with great intelligence? Is it because he has degrees in Sanskrit? That makes him highly intelligent? Not according to Srimad Bhagavatam. What makes one supremely intelligent? He performs Sankirtan. Yagyai Sankirtana Prayayar Yajanti Hi Sumedasaha. So the real mark of an intelligent person is that that person is fully engaged in Sankirtan. Samkirtan. Complete glorification of the name, fame, form, pastimes, entourage, words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This verse, Yagyai Sankirtana Prayar Yajantihis, this is the verse which explains Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the hidden avatar in the age of Kali. You'll find a verse by Prahlad Maharaj in Canto 7. He uses the term Chana Avatar, the hidden incarnation. Also, there is a verse either in the 3rd or 5th canto in a description of Lord Varaha. Same idea is given. The hidden incarnation, concealed incarnation, because he's known as Triyuga. He does not appear in the age of Kali. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is the discussion between Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and, I can't think of his name, Gopinath Acharya, pretty sure. Gopinath Acharya. When Gopinath Acharya was telling Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya that this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who he had just seen, Lord Chaitanya, entered the Jagannath temple, fainted. And then they did the test to see if he was fake, if he was a pretender, just putting on a show. But they did the test and it was shown, yes, here is a great Mahabhagavat devotee. So, after this incident, there is a discussion. And Gopinath Acharya is trying to tell Sarvabhauma, they have some relationship, some kind of familial relationship. And Gopinath was saying, you have seen this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the disciples of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, they argue, no. The Lord is Triyuga. He doesn't appear in the age of Kali. But then Gopinath says, you do not know the scriptures. There are scriptures such as Srimad Bhagavatam, Mahabharata. There's another kind of incarnation. Yuga avatar. That's Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When it says Tri Yuga, it means there's no Leela or pastime avatar. So in this way, he tried to convince him. It wasn't until later when Lord Chaitanya exhibited his Shadbhuja form that everything was revealed to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And he was at that point, during the incident with Gopinath, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was considered the number one Mayavad Mayavad scholar in all of India. He was number one. But after being converted by Lord Chaitanya's preaching to him, Lord Chaitanya's defeating him in his explanation of the Vedas, Vedanta philosophy. And then it was revealed to Sarvabhauma. Lord Chaitanya exhibited 6-arm form, 2 arms of Ramachandra, 2 arms of Krishna, 2 arms as Lord Chaitanya. Then Sarvabhauma became Mahabudhe. He became Mahabudhe. Why? He became a staunch follower of Chaitanya, fanatic. So much a fanatic that he wanted to change a word in Srimad Bhagavatam. He wanted to change Mukti Pade to Bhakti Pade. And Lord Chaitanya said, no, there's no need to change the books. Because Lord Chaitanya said, I can extract from this word Mukti Pade, Bhakti. How? Because one of Krishna's names is, everybody say, Mukunda. He gives liberation. So Lord Chaitanya said, I can remember Krishna even with this reading of Mukti Pade. Because that is why we study Srimad Bhagavatam. To remind us of Krishna, our relationship with Krishna. Lord Chaitanya instructed Sarvabhauma. He instructed Prakashananda Saraswati. What? That all the Vedic literatures are only teaching 3 things. That's all they're doing. Yes, there's hundreds and thousands of verses. But we're only talking about 3 things. You have an eternal relationship with Krishna. It's always been there. It's there now and it'll always be there. It's simply a question of, do I want to act on it or do I want to neglect or forget it? When I come to the material world, I want to forget my eternal relationship with Krishna. That's why we're here. We want to deny it. We don't, but Prabhupada teaches throughout his books that originally you were with Krishna, and that means service, because that's what we are. Jivera Swarupahai Krishnera Nityadas. Nitya, always. Just like my name, Nirantara, always. Means been there in the past, and there's no beginning. In the Bhagavad Gita, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. Sanatana means ever existing. Just as we say, by definition, God always existed. It's not that God was born on a certain date. That's why another word is used, Aja, unborn. Ajopi son of Yayatma. Krishna says, I am unborn. Kunti said, I am bewildered. We already studied chapter 8, where Kunti said, I am bewildered because the unborn supposedly is taking birth. But if you study Bhagavad Gita, you will find this word aja also applies to the soul. That synonym is there also. So just as by definition, God always existed, we always existed. And that existence means service. We already read earlier in this first canto, service is the most congenial form of intimacy. So we have an eternal relationship of service to Krishna. Now, before coming to Krishna consciousness, we were in the state of amnesia. What was that state of amnesia? I'm a man. I'm American. I am this, I am that. That's called false ego. That's not great intelligence. Great intelligence begins when one accepts, I am the eternal servant of God, nothing more, nothing less. So, Sambandha, the first track of Vedic knowledge, understanding, being convinced from every conceivable angle of vision that you have an eternal connection, relation. Sambandha means relationship. That has always been there. It's just been forgotten. That's why you'll see throughout Prabhupada's purports and synonyms, rejuvenated. The spiritual life is rejuvenated, reawoken, revived. Another one he uses, revived. Okay, so it's always been there. Sambandha. That's the first thing. Now, once I am convinced that I have an eternal relationship of service to Krishna, what do I do now? Because that's not sufficient. Now I have to act on that understanding. That's called abhideya. Acting on that understanding that I have an eternal relationship of service to Krishna. That's the second. The Vedic scriptures are indicating you have an eternal relationship with Krishna. Now act on that understanding. Prove it. Demonstrate it. Just like anyone can say, I love you, doesn't mean anything. Love means demonstrate, show it, do something. That's why Prabhupada says, service is the most congenial form of intimacy. If I want to show someone that I have some appreciation or affection or love, then I have to do something to demonstrate that. But that alone is not enough. Then there is the third tract, prayojana. What is the result of serving Krishna? Yes, what is the result? Suffering? Is that the result of serving Krishna? Misery? No. Love. Prayojana. Love of God. And Lord Chaitanya is teaching, this is the ultimate goal of life. Love of God. That wonderful chapter towards the end of the Madhya Lila. Life's ultimate goal. Love of Godhead. Such a nice concept. This is what the Krishna consciousness movement is preaching. There is a very popular movement right now called prosperity religion. Very popular. They are preaching. I've studied them. They are preaching that your proof that you worship God is that you become materially affluent. And if you're not materially affluent, then you must be not worshiping the proper God. That is subscribed to somebody in the White House. He has a guru. And that's the philosophy. But Srimad Bhagavatam begins with total rejection of that nonsense philosophy. Dharma kaitavo. It's kicked out. Projita. Kick this nonsense out. Get rid of it. No. The real goal of religion, love of God. That's the real religion. Love of God. This is what Lord Chaitanya is teaching. Not material aggrandizement. No. That is cheating. Yes. Therefore, what did Bhakti Siddhanta say? This material world is simply a society of cheaters and the cheated. We're seeing it every day. Blatantly. Headline news. What is it? You are being cheated and you like it. But not you. When I said you, I don't mean you. The material world, the fools and the rascals who will not come to Krishna consciousness. No, you are not being cheated. Why? Because you're reading, is this fake news, Srimad Bhagavatam? This is not fake news. This is, not only is it not fake news, it is the absolute truth. Not relative truth. Yes, relative truth means it's true sometimes. But we're not studying relative truth. The very first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam defined the absolute truth. That's where it starts from. And that's why we say, can you handle the truth? Yes. When you come to Krishna consciousness, you learn to handle the truth. How? Trinadapi sunichena taradiva sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. The keys to the kingdom of God is in that mantra. There you go. You want the essence? Just keep yourself meek and humble. Tolerate all the disturbances that are inevitable in this material world. You cannot escape it. Offer all respects to all living entities and give up any concern for people honoring you or praising you or worshiping you. No, just forget that. And then, if you can do these four things, then you can easily chant the holy name of God. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It says here, Maharaj Parikshit, Maha-Atmana of the great devotee. Prabhupada mentioned it. How when he was in the womb of his mother, he was saved from the Brahmastra. By who? By Krishna. And so Prabhupada points out, at the end here, he could have easily been protected. But no, he accepted. He accepted the acts of the external energy as supreme. So, we here in this Krishna consciousness movement, we are meant to develop our original state of love of God. And we do that by simply performing the different kinds of devotional activities, day in, day out. Simply performing these activities, gradually, step by step, we will achieve, will reawaken. There is this very nice verse by Rupa Goswami, number 7 of the Upadeshamrita. The holy name, fame, form, pastimes, entourage of Krishna is sweet, just like sugar candy. Anyone who has been to India or some places in South America, you can get that sugar cane juice. Very, very nice. Better than any candy bar. So sweet. So Rupa Goswami, this analogy is brilliant. And Rupa Goswami is also Mahabudhe, greatly intelligent. So he points out that sugar cane juice is sweet. That's what it is. It's sweet. But if I have the disease of jaundice, which is a disease of the liver, because of that disease condition, that naturally sweet sugar candy juice tastes foul. I can't taste. So I know I don't have jaundice because I can still taste sweet things. But when you have jaundice, you give somebody sweet, can't. It's too foul. Okay, so Rupa Goswami says in the same way, Krishna's name, fame, form, pastimes, entourage, his words, it's also sweet. But the conditioned soul has spiritual jaundice. It's called avidya, ignorance. What is ignorance? Identifying with this material world. That is ignorance. That is false ego. I identify with this material world. And we have this disease to a lesser or greater extent. Depends. Not everybody's on the same platform. We see over the years, with ourselves and with others, people are joining the movement, yes, but each one has a different level of what we call baggage that they have to deal with, conditioning. Not everybody, it's not a level playing field. Some people are, I know for myself, when the temple president in 55th Street said, Nirantara, you know what? You have a lot of ignorance in you. And now I've realized, you know what? He was right. He was right. I didn't know I was crazy. I didn't know I was a fool. That's why it's good to get married. Because your wife will be the first one to tell you, you're a fool. You're crazy. So, because we have the disease of ignorance, Krishna's name, although it's the sweetest thing, Madhurang, Madhurang, it's the sweetest thing, it doesn't taste sweet. When I try to read Bhagavad Gita, it puts me to sleep. Why? Because I have ignorance. I'm not attracted to read about Krishna's pastimes. I have no attraction because I have this disease of ignorance. So what to do? First step is to recognize it. Yes, that's the first step. Recognize it. I'm diseased. Just like anyone who knows anything about AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. That's one of the first things they have to publicly say in the group. I am an alcoholic. That is important. Not that I don't have a problem. There's nothing wrong with me. The problem's you. And that's ignorance. Always blaming somebody else. No, the first ownership is the problem's me. I have a problem. That's why our movement is not Alcoholics Anonymous. Our movement is Maya Anonymous. Yes, I am a conditioned soul. Yes, I have been a victim of Maya. Yes, I am a fallen, conditioned soul. Now let me act in such a way that I get out of Maya. So Rupa Goswami points out, the first thing, take the medicine. But it's bitter. Too bad. Just like we tell our children when the child gets sick. So the parent has to give bitter medicine. The child doesn't like it. I remember when I was a young child, in those days, the doctors would make house calls. So we had this one, I remember, Dr. Millette. And whenever I got sick, my mother would call Dr. Millette, and it was always the same medicine. This bottle of brown stool. That's what it tasted like. It was some kind of sulfur. I don't know what it was. That was the nastiest. And I'd have to, my mother would make me take it. I hated it. It looked like chocolate milk, but it didn't taste like chocolate milk. It was horrible. But you have to take your medicine. In the same way, the beginning, every day, getting up, it's hard. I don't feel like chanting. Too bad. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. I don't feel like sitting in Bhagavatam class. Why do I got to listen to that numbskull? That guy. Why do I got to listen to him? Take your medicine. Oh, that guy's leading kirtan again? Oh, man. Can't you get somebody good around here? Yes. We're in the My Anonymous program. It's hard work. Giving up our conditioning. It's very hard work. But you stick to it. Day in, day out, year in, year out. Now, Rupa Goswami says, if you take the medicine of Krishna's holy name, even though you don't want to, you take it by force. Because you have taken the medicine, you're starting to be cured. So that's what's happening. We're chanting every day, forcibly, but don't worry. You're getting cured. Little by little by little, it gets a little easier. Little easier. That means you're getting purified. You're getting cured of the disease of ignorance. Prabhu, how long do I have to chant? Until you come to the stage when you chant Hare Krishna, you don't want to stop. Why won't you want to stop? Because it'll be the sweetest, sweetest thing. You won't be able to give it up. The famous words Prabhupada spoke to John Lennon when Mr. Lennon asked Prabhupada, how do I know who is the real guru? Because he already had the experience with the Maharishi and found the Maharishi to be a fake, a cheater, another cheater. He had that realization. So he was questioning. So Prabhupada, so brilliant. Yes, Prabhupada was in touch with Super Soul. Prabhupada's words were, you find that person most addicted to Krishna. Because at that time, due to the influence of Yoko Ono, John Lennon had become attached to heroin. So what did Prabhupada say? Addicted to Krishna. So until you're addicted to Krishna, keep on taking the medicine. Don't stop. And when you're addicted to something, you can't give it up. Just like there's a few things I'm addicted to. Kofta. Paneer. I can't stop. But when will the day come when I can't stop chanting? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. So before we take discussion, just remind everyone, Sunday is our Bhagavad Gita Mahayagya. And anyone, at least in my experience, if you sit and you participate for the whole 700 shlokas, by the end, quoting my friend Urjaswat, may he rest in peace, I get jacked up out of control, Prabhu. So, attend the Bhagavad Gita Yajna from start to finish with each shloka. All right, discussion. Yes, Tattvavit Mahabaho.
Well, Nirantara Prabhu, you probably noticed in the purport, Prabhupada says that the welfare, peace, and prosperity of the citizens depends on the king. And you commented on a popular movement. I think you said it's called religious prosperity or something.
Prabhu, yeah. So you want me to tie it in? Yes.
You said that this idea that religion should bring you prosperity, that's cheating religion. But then the purport says that prosperity depends on the king.
So Prabhupada answers that earlier in first canto. Material well-being automatically follows spiritual well-being. So you simply worship Krishna, you will get what you need. The problem with this material prosperity, it's based on the principle of greed. And what is greed? One of the three gates leading to hell. So what is our philosophy? Simple living, high thinking. We don't need a toilet made of gold to pass stool. Okay? We live, you here in the community, you live very simple. But you're spending your time simply focusing on spiritual life. We get nice clothes, comfortable, like I've been saying lately in my preaching. I love this devotee clothing. It's so comfortable. If I had to wear a suit and a tie, forget it. I'd be miserable. Dhoti and kurta, so comfortable. So, and do I look like I've been starving? So, material well-being automatically follows spiritual well-being. That's our philosophy. That they don't know. They think the goal of religion is, oh, I know I'm a great worshiper of God because I have 20 hotels. No. The 6 Goswamis were living underneath a tree. But they had the treasure house of love of Godhead. So much they were giving it out. So that's how we reconcile that. Are you satisfied?
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else? Discussion. So Avasji, anything? You're happy? Anything else, Prabhus? Please forgive my offenses. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jai.
Yeah, it's just today. Thank you.
Good, good, good.
Very nice.
So I'll see you Sunday?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. We're geared up for it.
Jai.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Jai. May Krishna bless you. Hare Krishna.
I learned that verse, Krishna Nama Kavidasi Taptavit.
Yes.
I learned that from you because if you remember, the 55th Street in was it 79 or 78, you gave Nectar of Instruction classes, if I remember correctly.
Boy, you remember better than me. I'm
believe-
glad I did because
I believe that was you.
I don't know. If you say so, I accept.
I forgot the words. Beautiful words I want to describe for you, but I forgot. But
Just say Hari Bol.
man, well, I was supposed to play.
See you at breakfast from you.
Jai.
Thank you so much for this. So,
Thank you for appreciating.
very inspiring.
Thank you. Yes, Mata.
One of their side effects of Nama Prabhu is prosperity, material prosperity. So I didn't want to start a whole thing because I don't remember where I got it.
Ah.
And so I didn't want to point it out. But when
I'm sure it's there in Bhakti Vinod.
I'm sure it's there. I just can't remember.
Well, it's also, no. It's also there in the cleansing of the Gundicha.
Krishna Kirtana Ganana Ganapatau.
I always was in this cynical kind of mood, like, does this man really exist who wrote these books? They were just so transcendental. I just couldn't even believe it was somebody on this planet, yet everybody in the temple knew him. They were all the ISKCON Press devotees, they were all in Boston. They all knew him, and so, but still I doubted, is this man really here? And so until the day I met him, I had this doubt. Is he going to really walk through those doors? So the day before I got initiated, we had just gotten to New York. I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time. We missed his arrival at the airport because our temple president, Damodar, felt that our business wasn't just to go and gawk at him. He wanted us to stay out on Sankirtan and just go up there just to get initiated, and that's it. So the night before, Prabhupada was giving Bhagavad Gita classes every night, because in the morning he had initiation every morning for a week. So he wasn't giving class. He was just doing the initiation. So the night before, I go into the temple room. It's a hot July night, packed with devotees. And I'm just sitting there looking at the door, waiting for him to come through. And I remember that Kirtiraj Prabhu was going around and tapping devotees on the shoulder and saying, "Can you leave? Because there's not enough room for everybody, and there's still people in the hallway that never saw Prabhupada." And he asked me that, and I had never seen Prabhupada. Prabhupada had been there for a couple of days, but I had just arrived. And when he said that to me, I didn't budge. I'm just staying here. I'm going to see Srila Prabhupada. And because I stayed put, sure enough, within a matter of time, Prabhupada walked through the door, and all those doubts that I had went completely out the window. And it was like seeing an old friend I hadn't seen in so long. So that was my experience of seeing Srila Prabhupada the first time. He was an old, old friend, and I'd just forgotten about him.
In the couple of months before we met Srila Prabhupada, when Gary and I were living in Haight-Ashbury area, there were some flyers that were distributed. And they said things like, "The Swami is coming to town. Chant and be high forever," this sort of thing. I'm sure you've heard of them. And I remember Gary looking at one of these flyers that said, "The Swami is coming to town," and him saying, "Well, when this Swami comes to town, we'll go see him and we'll do whatever he says to do." It's just, the whole thing was such a mystical, incredible experience, in that we were actually very well situated at miles away, 1,500 miles away in Texas, and we were drawn there. And I think this is true of many other people. So then we went to Frederick Street and found out about when the classes were and so forth. Made an appointment with Srila Prabhupada, and Mukunda Das, who later became Mukunda Goswami, arranged for us to visit Srila Prabhupada. So in our first meeting with him, private meeting with him, he took us up to his apartment. I remember waiting pensively to meet Srila Prabhupada. He brought us in, and Srila Prabhupada was sitting in, those little bay windows that they have in San Francisco, these apartments with bay windows. He was sitting in sunlight, looking very effulgent and very peaceful. And he sat in a chair, and there was another chair opposite. I think he sat in the lounge chair and I sat in the rocking chair, or vice versa. I can't remember that one point, but we were opposite one another. And Gorsinder, Gary, sat on the floor. And he began to ask us questions all about our lives, what we were doing, who we were, where we had come from. He was very personally interested in us. And I mean, he was very personally interested in each of his disciples, each of his students. But he asked us, you know, if we were students, what we were studying. We told him we had been studying art and that we were artists. He asked about our parents, our family, so many things. In the course of the conversation, I told him that I had studied art in Europe and that I had traveled all over Europe and studied in various places. And he was quite surprised. He raised his eyes and said, "Oh, you have traveled so much?" Because I was very young. I looked like I was 16. I was actually 19 or 20. And I said, "Yes, Srila Prabhupada, yes." He wasn't called Prabhupada yet. "Yes, but none of it has made me happy." And he smiled and said, "Ah, that is required. To actually be disgusted with material life."
When Prabhupada did the initiation, we sat on the floor with Prabhupada. I got initiated with Jayatirtha was there. Ujjvala got initiated at the same time. Can't remember the others. Anyhow, Prabhupada sat on the floor. We watched him chant on the beads. He did the fire sacrifice. And then when he came around to giving us our names, and he came to me and he was going to give me my beads and my name, and he goes, "You know, your name is Tulsi Das." And somehow or other I got some kind of look on my face like, or whatever, and Prabhupada looks at me and he goes, "Is that all right?" And I said, "Oh yes, Prabhupada." And I was so shocked because I was just a new devotee and I hardly recognized any of the names, but I knew the name Tulsi Das because we'd done the Tulsi worship and all that. So that was kind of my first real kind of personal interaction with Prabhupada.
When I went up to the Vyasa when they called my name, Aravinda was sitting to Prabhupada's side, and he would say the name first. And when you're that close to Prabhupada, you could hear the name before Prabhupada said it. So I was already kind of bowled over by the name Mahamaya. And then Prabhupada said it, and there was this sort of shocked silence in the temple room. And then Prabhupada cracked up and started laughing. So then everyone laughed, including myself. And then he said something like, the illusory energy is not all bad. He said, for one who does not want to serve Krishna, the illusory energy is there. And he gave the example of the moon. There are phases of the moon, and Mahamaya was a phase of Radharani's energy. So I don't remember him handing me back my beads or anything, but I just remember that experience of being in front of him, and I felt like he was seeing me, not the layers of false ego that I thought I was, but he was just seeing the soul, and it was just such a wonderful experience. He definitely was like lifting me up to his platform, and just, it was just really a nice exchange, Prabhupada.
At the time of the initiation, there were no saris, there were no social customs, none of these things. And I had been an art student, and art students wear jeans. So I was actually initiated in blue jeans. Well, actually they were beige jeans with paint stains on them. It didn't seem to matter to Srila Prabhupada, but that was what our life was like at that time. When I tell people I was initiated in jeans, they're just amazed. But most of us, we didn't know what saris were yet. So during my initiation, I remember watching the ceremony and seeing him putting the flower, putting the colored dyes, and putting the, making the fire, building the fire. And I remember thinking, what is this? What is the depth of the meaning of this? What is really going on? In other words, I didn't have the kind of, I didn't have the background. I mean, there was no Bhagavad Gita printed yet, for one thing. The only thing we had were Prabhupada's 3 books. So we did read those right away. And the first job that he gave us was painting a great big 4-foot by 4-foot Radha Krishna painting. But during my initiation, I had some misgivings. So then after the initiation, I went to see Srila Prabhupada, and I went upstairs to visit him, and I told him that I didn't feel liberated. I thought that when I got initiation, by golly, it was going to be nirvana immediately. I was going to be liberated. And he was very patient with me. He said, yes, just see the fan over here. There was a fan sitting in the corner. If I unplug it, it may spin a few more times, but because it has been unplugged, it will stop eventually. So it's like that. Your material life, although it may not cease immediately, because it has been unplugged, it will spin a few more times. But just do the process as I told you. So he explained it very beautifully, very, very gently.
One experience I had at that time, I'd studied the pronunciation for the Sri Upanishad with Pradumna in New York, but I only knew the first 6 verses. Now it's said that the Guru knows everything about the disciple, he knows everything. So he's expert in engaging the disciple and using anything the disciple has to offer. The pure devotee is expert in using that and engaging it. So I only knew these 6 verses, and an impersonal Mayavadi Swami came to visit Prabhupada at Berry Place. So when he came in, Prabhupada gave him all respects and had me put a cushion down for him. And then he said, please go make up a fruit plate. And I ran down and made up a fruit plate and came up. And I went over to Prabhupada to offer it to him first. And he said, no, offer it to our guest. And I went over and offered it to Swami. And I came back to offer it to Prabhupada, and he said, sit down. I thought, okay. So I sat down. Prabhupada looked at the sannyasi, the Swami, and he said, my boys all know Sanskrit. And I thought, oh no, what is he up to now? And he was beaming, and he looked at me and he said, chant Sri Upanishad. And so I started chanting, Ong Purnam Adak Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachite Purnasya Purnamada, in perfect meter, and I'm as best I could. So I get up to the 4th verse, and I'm thinking, Prabhupada, I only know 6. But I kept going, I had faith. I got up to the fifth verse, and I was really sweating, but I kept going. And when I started on the 6th verse, I felt like Drupadi, about to come unraveled. And I was mentally, I was saying to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, I only know 6. I only know 6. And when I got on the 2nd line of the 6th verse, Prabhupada looked at me just as I was finishing. He went, that will be enough. You can go now. So he used, even though I only had that much knowledge, he used it perfectly, and got the maximum value out of my very little bit of knowledge, So that was a very nice experience.
At the Pandal, there was a Pandal set up for every night, and the most significant thing that I remember was after Prabhupada gave his lecture, he asked for questions, and one man came up to the microphone, and he was challenging, and he said, can you show me a miracle? And of course we were all thinking of Sai Baba or these other gurus who, can produce ashes in their hands and things like that. And that's probably what he was demanding, can you do something like that? Maybe he even mentioned that, I don't remember exactly, but Prabhupada just looked at the 150 of us sitting on the stage in front of him and just swooped his hand in front to indicate us and said, this is my miracle. I have changed these Malechas and Yavanas into Vaishnavas. And we were all cheering, Hari Bol, Jai. We were just so happy to be his examples, and his examples of success.
Srila Prabhupada immediately engaged us as artists. He knew that we were art students before, so his very first project was to have me paint a great big 4-foot by 4-foot painting of Radha Krishna from the cover of his Srimad Bhagavatam. Then he had me paint a great big 4-foot by 3-foot painting of him sitting on the Vyasasana with a painting of Lord Chaitanya dancing in Sankirtan party hanging behind him in the picture that I painted, and specifically with Lord Chaitanya's foot touching his head. So those are the paintings that he started us on. And what I found so significant in this is that Srila Prabhupada engaged people in the work for which they had a natural propensity. He always found, and this gave the person a taste for devotional service because they already had that inclination.
In the course of the morning walk, I'd have to say that in my mind throughout the walk, I was scheming, how is it that I could get up front? That's all I could think about. And I'd be constantly scheming how to maneuver myself in a situation where I could, get there and say something maybe, because I felt that I'd never get this opportunity again. I really strongly felt that. In the course of the walk, there was one devotee that was asking Prabhupada a lot of questions. And very intimate questions of Radha and Krishna pastimes and the gopis. Prabhupada answered, but it wasn't very exciting. It wasn't enlivening. Prabhupada, he would answer the question, but then he wouldn't say much. And he would just, continue chanting his japa. And this devotee was very persistent in his questioning. And Prabhupada was very nice. He didn't say, he didn't exhibit any, anger or anything of that nature. But it didn't seem like it was very exciting, like what I thought a morning walk was going to be like, very exciting and powerful and, a lot of nice Krishna conscious nectar, although that was nectar, but it just didn't seem like Srila Prabhupada was really absorbed in it. So the morning walk that day wasn't very far. It wasn't a very long distance that Prabhupada walked. It was like maybe a big parking lot, I believe, if I can recall properly. And we walked and, you got to the end of the park and there was a, row of trees there. Turned around and then kind of came back. So we came to that particular point to turn around, and I became very, very nervous because I thought I only had so much time left to be able to approach Srila Prabhupada and say something. So throughout the whole walk back, as I was, scheming, how am I going to do this? I was trying to develop enough nerve and courage to get there. So finally I just made up my mind. I thought, I got to do this. I cannot, hesitate. I'll never get this opportunity again. So I really built myself up, with courage and determination, and I zipped through all the sannyasis. There's a pretty good quantity of them. So I kind of zigzagged through the crowd, and of course, trying to get through the crowd, I had to exert a certain amount of energy. The excitement of doing that, the fear of offending Prabhupada, the fear of not saying anything that would be significant, that would even be, noticeable was all. So all these emotions were in there, and so obviously when I ran through the crowd, I was so excited that practically, at the top of my voice, I would say, I yelled out, "Srila Prabhupada!" And it was so startling that Prabhupada just stopped, right in the middle of the, the street there, and all the devotees just became, paralyzed. They didn't know what was going on. They thought it was some crazy thing or crazy guy. So everybody stopped, Prabhupada stopped, and he looked at me, and I just, out of complete anxiety, just started saying all kinds of stuff. Srila Prabhupada, we just want to please you. We're distributing books at O'Hare Airport. And then I started telling how many books are being distributed and how we're doing it. And, I just wanted to make sure I threw in everything. I didn't want to miss it. So I'd said everything I could say, And I just kept saying over and over, we just want to please you, Srila Prabhupada, and, this is for you. And, just all kinds of statistics of devotees doing books there. And Srila Prabhupada just, looked at me throughout the whole thing. And I'm sure it wasn't very long. I'm sure it was just a matter of seconds, but, it meant like minutes to me, and my throat became like really choked up. I couldn't talk anymore, and my mouth became dry. I recall at one point that all I could hear was my heart, beating immensely. I mean, just fast, and God, I just more or less said everything, and then I was just finished. I just kind of like stood there before Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, he was very merciful, he was very kind, and he was very peaceful and calm, because he could see I was very excited, and and Prabhupada was very calming, and he said, "Thank you very much." He said, "Thank you." And then what was really shocking at that particular point was Prabhupada in a very calm, demeanor, very, very wonderful, and just trying to encourage me. He turned around and looked at all the devotees that were on the morning walk. He just faced them, and he said, "Just see, this is my real devotee." And he was referring, of course, to book distribution. So that was very meaningful for me. I think on that particular day, I didn't realize at that particular time what that was, because I was just so overwhelmed with so many emotions. But I do recall that after the morning walk, and going back and just trying to think about what actually happened there, it really, it meant my life. That was my life after that, I felt. I felt this was an instruction from Srila Prabhupada. It was to me, I felt, although I'm sure he was referring to more than just me, but I felt that it was something that Srila Prabhupada was telling me, and it meant everything for me. So even up to this point, so many years later, I consider that to be the most important, instruction or event in my life in Krishna consciousness.
Another very significant thing happened in Boston. Swamiji became Srila Prabhupada. The way this happened was that Gorsinder was studying Hindi, and he was studying Sanskrit, and he was studying various forms of address, and Ji is an affectionate friendship form of address, and this is all very new to us. So I was sitting in Srila Prabhupada's room and taking dictation, as I often did, and Gorsinder was at the doorway, and he said, "Swamiji, is it okay if I call Govinda Dasi Govindaji?" And Prabhupada, Swamiji said, "No, Ji is a very third-class form of address. It should not." And so I said, "Well, then why are we calling you Swamiji if it's a third-class form of address?" And he said, "Not very important." I said, "No, it is very important. We want to know what is the best thing we can call you." And Swamiji said, "Well, you could call me Gurudev, or Guru Maharaj, or Srila Prabhupada." And I said, "Well, which one is the best of those three? If you give me three, I don't know which one. So you pick the best one that you want to be called." And Swamiji said, "Srila Prabhupada is nice." I said, "Okay, from today you will be called Srila Prabhupada." And so I told all the devotees, and everyone started calling him Srila Prabhupada from that day. He was no longer Swamiji.
When I arrived in Mayapur, it was just before the festival. And I had just come from Brazil. We just opened a temple there in the BBT, and I was a young brahmachari, and young. And in those days, when you're a brahmachari and you're preaching and opening centers, sometimes you get distracted, and what you want to do. I wanted to become a sannyasi. I don't know if it was because of the Mahaprasadam, or not really, because I was kind of getting that anyways. But I wanted to do it, I think, because like everyone else, you want to grow and get more prominence, so Prabhupada will see you. And I think, that was why everybody wanted it. Unfortunately, in my case, there were other things that I wanted beneath the surface as well. But at that time, I was on the list to be recommended for sannyas that year. And I was going to Mayapur. I was going with Hridayananda Maharaj. And And when we arrived in Mayapur, it was the first time I'd ever been to India. And I remember sitting down in the Prasadam hall and just looking at how incredible this place was. You know, how huge and how beautiful, and just, you know, its presence and its power was just, and I thought to myself, I think I said it out loud, which was the mistake in Mayapur. I said, boy, would I love to manage this place. And Jayapataka Maharaj was sitting next to me, and I wasn't aware of even who he was at the time. And I know, and then that evening, I got called into Prabhupada's room. Now, in Mayapur, on the first floor, Prabhupada stayed on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, the sannyasis and GBC stayed. And I stayed in one of those rooms with Tamal Maharaj, Hridayananda Maharaj, I think Jagadish Prabhu was there, and I was taking care of them, and I was staying in the room. And it was late in the night, and Hariswari Prabhu came in and said, Prabhupada, you know, or something, would like to see you. So I went in, and when I went in the room, there was Hridayananda Maharaj, Jayapataka Maharaj, and Srila Prabhupada. And so Prabhupada said to me, so you'd like to stay here? And I was just overwhelmed that a question was even being directed at me. And I said yes. So they talked about it a bit. Prabhupada had said to me that he wanted Bhavananda to travel on a boat that they had recently acquired up and down the Ganges preaching, that Jayapataka Maharaj, he wanted him to preach to important politicians and important Indians, and they would need help in the management in Mayapur. And being that I was a Canadian, which in those days I think helped visa-wise, and that I was a manager, I was being targeted to stay and help in Mayapur. And I was thinking, what will Brazil do? You know, after I walked out of the room, it hit me, I'm not in Brazil anymore. And in Brazil, I was kind of like, I was on my own. I was the big, you know, honcho. It started to actually weigh on me what I just said yes to. And so it got really heavy. It got heavier and heavier to the point where I changed my mind. And I went to, I can't remember how many times I went back in and asked Prabhupada if I could go back to Brazil, and how many times it kind of went back and forth. I think the first time maybe even Hridayananda Maharaj went in and said something, and then Prabhupada had agreed, and he came out and said, okay, you don't have to stay, you can go back. But then that night, I got asked back into his room again. So Prabhupada looked at me and he said, so have you made your mind up yet? And I was under the impression I was already, released. And I just said, so he says, do you want to stay? So I couldn't say no. I couldn't say no to him. You know, I knew it was a no-no, you know, that you're supposed to do what he asked you to do. So I kept saying yes. And then I'd walk out of the room, and then it would hit me again. And I'd just get over, and every day was this constant. And at nighttime, and then I started going back in and saying, Srila Prabhupada, I don't know what they're going to do in Brazil. There's a BBT, the temples. No one has any experience. I'm the only devotee there who's had any experience with the movement. There's 40, 50 people there already. You know, so I need to go back. And he wouldn't budge. I guess he had plans for someone else to go and take care of it already. And he kept insisting, you know, that I stay. And every time he would call me back in, he would ask me if I would stay, and I'd say yes, and I'd go back out completely overwhelmed, come back and ask if I could leave. He'd say okay. That night he'd call me back in again, ask me again if I'd made my mind up yet. So finally on one day during his massage, I went up to his room and had asked him, you know, could I go back? And he said, he was sitting having his massage, Hariswari Prabhu was there, and he turned to me and, you know, just so kind, he said, in the spiritual world, we all have different relationships with Krishna, so, you know, it's okay, you know, you can go back to Brazil.
We were at New Jersey in the spring of 1968 after Srila Prabhupada's stroke. We were living there for 3 weeks. It was at that time that Gaurasundar received his call to the draft. So he had to have an appointment in New York and it was a very great likelihood that he would be drafted into the army. Naturally, we were in a lot of anxiety about this because Gaurasundar didn't want to fight a war that he didn't believe in and that Srila Prabhupada also did not support. So the day came for Gaurasundar to go for his draft appointment in New York. And he was in anxiety, and as he bowed down to leave, Swamiji said to him, "Don't worry, Krishna will protect you. He will take care of everything." So he was gone the whole day by train to New York, and I know during the day Srila Prabhupada mentioned him several times, so he was thinking of him. Then in the evening, we heard him coming up the stairs, and he had a big smile on his face. He was very happy. And so as soon as he came in, Swamiji called him to his room. What happened? And he explained that he had a silken cord with the Lord Jagannath on his neck, a murti of Lord Jagannath about 3 inches high. And he also had his big red chanting beads. And the doctors there had never seen such odd things. So they had given him a 3Y, based on not being a psychiatrically competent for the army. And so Srila Prabhupada said, yes, just see, Krishna will protect. If we are sincere, he will make all arrangements. He will protect us. And you have chosen Krishna's service, not the army service, so Krishna has arranged everything perfectly.
So I was in LA, that was I started telling President in LA, and then Prabhupada came to LA, I don't know, maybe after Rath Yatra that year. That was 1974. So Prabhupada comes, and of course I'm the TP, so I get to go in the morning walks, I get to go in the garden and everything. So Prabhupada had just been there, just gotten there, and we were having one of those evening kind of things in the, you know, the little garden back in LA. And there was quite a few devotees all centered around, and I was kind of, Jayatirtha was by Prabhupada, and I just come in, and Jayatirtha goes, "Prabhupada, I'd like to introduce you to our new temple president here in LA, Tulsidas." So Prabhupada looks at me and he goes, "Oh, I know Tulsidas." So my heart, I'm going, oh, great. Prabhupada knows me. Prabhupada really recognizes me. I was, you know, this is happening in a nanosecond, but I'm really feeling, you know, like really good. You know, I know Tulsidas. Then he goes, and why did you leave Bombay? So I went from like this way up here to like, I just went crashing to the bottom, and my mind was just trying to find, what am I going to say? And my heart was beating up, and I started to make some excuses. Well, I was having some trouble with the management, or I was doing this or that, and finally I just went. And I looked at Prabhupada, straight in Prabhupada's eyes, and I said, "Srila Prabhupada, I was in Maya." And Prabhupada said, "Yes." And then he went on to give this whole lecture about, you know, how powerful Maya is and everything. But it was a highlight moment for me, that moment in the garden in LA.
And this was at the time when he was visiting Hawaii, and at that time there were several disciples who were by nature very intelligent and charismatic, and had misled some of the more simple folk, simple-minded devotees. And I was in a lot of anxiety about it, because I felt extremely protective of the devotees, having been the first devotee in Hawaii. They were like my children, sort of. So I was very protective, and I was very anxious about it. So I was explaining to Prabhupada how such and such, these people are, they're misleading him in this way and in that way, and changing the philosophy and so forth. And Prabhupada very calmly looked at me and said, the mouse respects the cat, And the cat respects the dog respects the wolf, and the wolf respects the tiger. But we see they are all animals. In other words, from his perspective, all of us, all of these people that he's having to deal with on this planet are really on the level of animals. And if we realize that, we won't get too puffed up. If we realize that we're really coming from very, very low-grade backgrounds, he's coming from Krishnaloka. There's no chance of our getting so puffed up that we think that we can outguess him, edit him, change his ideas about things, think we could do better. It's impossible. We can't. He can outguess. I mean, I saw so many instances of this. Unfortunately, one very close to home instance was my own husband, who I loved very much, Gaurasundar. He was brilliant. He was very educated. He was studying Sanskrit and Bengali, and he did the transliteration for Chaitanya Charitamrita, the first part of it. And he was a very nice devotee. He used to take Prabhupada on walks every day, and he did the massage every day. I give him all credit for all the wonderful service that he did. But later on he left, and Prabhupada made the comment to me, even though he knew I was quite attached, many times he said, Gaurasundar is suffering from too much intelligence. He has the disease of being too intelligent. He thinks he knows more than his guru. And this was Gaurasundar's flaw. He was very, very brilliant in every respect. But as soon as a person thinks they know more than their guru, then the fall down begins.
Early, around 70, 72, I'd been preparing for sannyas for about, it was a little later than that. What was it? Anyway, it was early 70s. I'm not sure of the date, but I'd been preparing for sannyas, and Srila Prabhupada was, he was treating me very special. We were going on the morning walk. I got to go on all the morning walks, and he would give me special attention and talk to me. And I remember one day, as I was on a morning walk with him, and as I'm looking at him, his skin looked like silk. It was like he revealed an energy to me, but his skin went from being flesh to being just golden silk. It was very beautiful. And I got myself all prepared and, shaved up and fresh cloth. And I went to Shyam Sundar and I said, Shyam Sundar, I'd like to see Srila Prabhupada. And he said, well, why do you want to see Srila Prabhupada? And this is when Shyam Sundar had just been made GBC. So I said, well, I want to ask him for sannyas. And he said, well, Kula Shekhar, he said, you really think you want to take sannyas? And I said, yeah, I've been preparing for it for years, and I'm very ready. Shyam Sundar said, well, do you ever think of marriage? I said, yeah, well, He said, do you ever think of sex? Do you ever think of marriage? I said, well, sometimes the thought crossed my mind. I said, but I don't pay any attention to it. So he said, well, look, Kula Shekhar, he said, maybe you should get married. I said, what? He said, yeah. He said, maybe you should get married. He said, look, this is a big decision. He said, this is for the rest of your life. He said, go away and think about it. He said, because if you ever think of sex, you shouldn't take sannyas. So I went away and thought about it that night, all night long. Didn't sleep much that night, I remember. And of course, trying to be truthful with myself, I thought, well, sometimes I do think of sex life, and it does cross my mind, and maybe I'm being just totally, false. I should probably get married. Well, then I started thinking, well, who do I want to marry? So I started thinking about all the different brahmacharinis and which one was the best one for me to marry. And anyway, I'd already gone through the complete ceremony, more or less. So I went back to Shamsunda the next morning and I said, Shamsunda, I said, I think you're right. I think I should probably get married. He said, well, you know, who would you want to marry? And I told him the name of the girl, and he said, oh, that's a good choice. Yeah, he said, you can go in and see Srila Prabhupada. He said, just knock on the door. So I said, great. So I knocked on the door, and I opened the door, came in, and Prabhupada was beaming at me, beaming. And I paid obeisances, and I got up and I sat there, and Prabhupada said, yes. I said, Srila Prabhupada, I'd like to get married. And he went, what? What? He said, who has done this to you? And I was devastated. He said, who has done this to you? And I said, well, Prabhupada, I went to see Shamsunda, and he went, Shamsunda! And he looked at Pradumna and he pointed, he said, Pradumna, he said, get Shamsunda in here immediately. Prabhupada was furious. And I sat there, I felt like a dog. I was looking at the floor and I was like devastated. So Shamsunda comes in and sits down. And Prabhupada said, who are you to tell my brahmachari to get married? Who are you? And Shamsunda said, well, Prabhupada, he said he wanted to take sannyas. And I told him if he ever thinks of sex life, Prabhupada said, everyone with a material body thinks of sex life. He said, look at him. He's finished. And Prabhupada looked at me with such compassion. He said, look at him. He's finished. He said, you have no right to tell my brahmacharis to get married, ever. That was, I don't remember much after that.
I'd kind of been wanting to get married for some time. Actually, in LA, you know, but some things, it never worked out in LA. Anyhow, so at that time, Prabhupada was practically giving sannyas, it seemed like, to everybody. You know, people that I, you know, just, he seemed like kind of like a mercy gift, you know, like Guru Das. None of that I'm saying anything bad, but he was like giving all these people. So, although in my heart I didn't really buy into it, between Rameshwar, mainly Rameshwar, and maybe Gopa Vrindapal or a couple others, they were convincing me, you should take sannyas, you should take sannyas. So we were in this kind of darshan with Prabhupada. There were probably 30 devotees. I was probably 15 feet back from Prabhupada. Jayatirtha was right beside me. Rameshwar was standing behind Prabhupada. And so he's standing behind, there was kind of a lull in the discussion. And Rameshwar catches my eyes and he goes, so I know what he means. So I kind of stammer, Srila Prabhupada? He goes, yes. I don't know, I've been talking with some of the devotees and I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but there's a thought that maybe it'd be a good move or a good thing for me to take sannyas. So Prabhupada said, well, how long have you been a brahmachari? And I said, 5 years. And he said, oh, very nice. And then he said, what about the fire? Or he said, what about the butter? He said either one of those things. I think, let's just say he said, what about the butter? And I was kind of going, what about the butter? And I'm going, and Jayatirtha whispers to me, he goes, you know, the women, fire, butter. So instead of being truthful with Prabhupada and saying, listen, Prabhupada, I'd really like to have some, you know, some female association and all that goes with it. I said, Prabhupada, as long as I'm traveling and preaching, everything is fine. That's a little bit of a thing. So Prabhupada said, okay, so you can take sannyas. So I said, oh, so should we bring my name up then at this Mayapur and then I wait a year? And he says, no, you take this year. Holy shit. Holy, what am I going to do? So I'm really at a, you know, kind of like, he's already told me I'm going to take sannyas. This is like in in a few months' time. So I'm looking around for like, well, what am I going to do? Because I don't vision myself like any of these other sannyasis. So at this same time, Prabhupada, I think, went to Hawaii after leaving LA, and they had that boat there that they wanted, but nobody could skip it or anything. And I love the water. My sun and moon are in Pisces. I've always lived on the water. I just love the water, and I thought, ooh, this is a nice idea. So I wrote up a whole proposal of like a traveling Sankirtan party on a boat. And I'd even gone and seen this schooner, this big Gloucester schooner, 120 foot, and the guy was going to train us on how to do it, and we had a whole program, and Rameshwar was behind it for book distribution. And because I knew I better find something to do if I'm going to take sannyas, because I'm not just going to go around to temples and give lectures, or I was a manager. So I could see me managing the boat and on the boat and, you know, coming into the town, and it would have been fun. And it seemed like it was something Prabhupada wanted. So I wrote him this whole big thing about my idea and preaching with the boat. And he wrote back this little short paragraph, why waste time sailing, better to fly instead. So I took, okay, I got it. Anyhow, Rameshwar really liked the idea. He really, really, really liked the idea, because I think it was the heyday of book distribution and the Sankirtan. This would be connected with the LA temple, so it'd be another feather in the LA temple growing, you know, empire there, which it was big. Everything was there at that time practically. Fate was there, and all the artists and all that kind of thing. Anyhow, so I took it fine. Prabhupada said, you know, all right, what am I going to do? I still got sannyas looking at me. So anyhow, in some long-distance calls between Rameshwar and Harikesh, Prabhupada was in Bombay translating. Rameshwar is talking to Harikesh, and he's trying to get Harikesh to bring this idea up again, that this is a good idea, and the boat and everything, and So anyhow, I guess Harikesh did me a real favor. And when he was explaining to Prabhupada, I guess, about the boat, and, you know, like maybe I don't know what happened, because nobody would tell me, but Prabhupada asked, well, why is he so anxious for doing this? I wasn't anxious for doing it, but Prabhupada asked that. So I think Harikesh said something like, well, Prabhupada, you know, he's in LA, and there's all these women around, and, you know, he's agitated or whatever, and this would be a good way, he'll always be out. And anyhow, so Prabhupada writes this scathing letter. Didn't even write it to me. He writes it to Rameshwar, who wouldn't even show it to me for years. I've got a copy of the letter now. And it's in it, Prabhupada just, he just saved me. He said, what a, you know, rascal, lowest of mankind, fool, you know, bad example, taking sannyas, all this kind of stuff. And Rameshwar was so afraid that I'd freak out if I saw it, he wouldn't even show it to me. He had Jayatirtha break the news to me in a gentle way. But the minute I heard that Prabhupada had said that basically I couldn't take sannyas, I just felt saved. So I was duplicitous with my spiritual master. I was, you know, in Laguna Beach, when I had told him, as long as I'm traveling and preaching, then I'm fine. And by his grace, he straightened it out. And the minute that letter came, in the core of my being, I was so thankful. I was relieved, because I had done something stupid. I did stupid first thing. I'd asked to take sannyas. And the second stupid thing was not being just straightforward with Prabhupada. If I'd have said, Prabhupada, well, I'm really, you know, not really thinking I'm sannyas material, but this has come up, and I really would like to get married and have a really nice wife, he'd have probably, I would imagine, instructed me down those lines. Maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't, but I didn't give him the chance to, I didn't give him the information to kind of give me the instruction.
As they were leaving, she said, "Should we leave too, Srila Prabhupada?" And he said, not unless you have some questions. And we both go, "No, we don't have any questions." We both offer obeisances at the same time. Actually, we did have questions. So as we both get up from paying obeisances, we simultaneously start asking questions. Anyway, I let her go first. She asked a question. She said, "Srila Prabhupada, I heard that in yesterday's darshan, you said that a sannyasi's business is to preach. Brahmachari's business is to assist the sannyasis. And the householder, the grihasta's business, is to do deity worship. So what about us brahmacharinis? Can we do deity worship?" And actually we were doing a lot of deity worship. We were doing most of the deity worship in Bombay at the time for Radha Rasa Bihari in the old temple. And he said, "Yes, you can also do deity worship." So she was satisfied with her answer. So then I asked my question. This is a question I had been thinking for a long time, and what I wanted to ask and what I did ask were two different things. I had heard from my friend Chintamani Prabhu that he had given her instructions to worship Lord Jagannath because her husband was Sudama and he had taken sannyas. And there was a deity of Lord Jagannath in Japan. I believe they were installed, but they were her deities. He told her on 2 different occasions to make Jagannath your husband, Subhadra your daughter, and Balaram your son. It's a very personal instruction.